He thought he was just sharing a sandwich. She thought no one would ever look at her without judgment again. But when a struggling single dad offers his last meal to a silent, mud-covered girl on a church step, he has no idea he's just met the heir to thousands of acres of forgotten land and the woman who will change his life forever. This isn't a story about charity. It's a story about choosing to stay, about the quiet power of kindness and how a ranch no one believed in became the heart of a second chance for 3 broken souls. If you believe in the kind of stories that restore your faith in people, if you love characters who heal not with grand gestures, but with patience, honesty, and a little shared silence, then take a second to subscribe and join us. We're just getting started, and trust me, you'll want to stay till the last page. The air smelled of old motor oil and morning frost, familiar, grounding, a kind of comfort that Noah Carter had grown to appreciate. He stood at the edge of his garage, sipping lukewarm coffee from a chipped thermos that had survived more than a few accidental drops. The same couldn't be said for most things in his life. Across the street, autumn leaves chased each other like restless children in the wind, brushing against the cracked sidewalks of Maple Street. It was a small town in the western corner of Colorado where nothing much changed, and everyone knew who fixed their cars, who didn't mow their lawns, and who still left milk out for stray cats. Noah was one of those people, predictable, private, but always kind. He wiped his hands on a rag and glanced at the wall clock inside the shop. 4:37 p.m. Time to close up. He never stayed past 5, not because he had someplace to be, but because there was someone waiting. Grace will be hungry, he mumbled to himself, a habit formed over a decade of fatherhood. He grabbed his jacket, locked the tools away, and left the garage with a paper bag holding 2 sandwiches. Peanut butter and banana, Grace's favorite. And the other one never made it home. The walk to the park wasn't long, just a few blocks past the old church, down a path flanked by maples, turning rust-colored under the early fall sun. The park bench, near the fountain that hadn't worked in years, had become a quiet ritual. That's where he usually found someone who needed a hot meal more than he did. But tonight was different. A fine drizzle began to fall as he reached the bench. No familiar faces, no quiet nods from the regulars. Just a figure, small, hunched, barely moving, curled beneath the awning of the church steps. She wasn't from around here. That much was obvious. She sat with her knees drawn tight. To her chest, fingers clutched around the frayed sleeves of a coat that had seen better decades. Mud caked the hem of her jeans, and her shoes, no laces, no soles, were soaked through. But it was her face that stopped him. Not because she was striking, though she was in a weathered, worn sort of way. It was her eyes, wide, hollow, waiting for the world to stop kicking her. Noah hesitated, then walked over slowly, his voice low and even. Evening. You okay? She didn't answer, just glanced at him, guarded but not hostile. He crouched down, keeping a respectful distance. I've got an extra sandwich. Banana and peanut butter, not fancy, but it sticks to the ribs. Still no answer. Her eyes flicked to the bag in his hand, then away again. You don't have to talk, he said gently, setting the sandwich beside her. Just eat. It's cold out. He stood, prepared to walk away, when her voice, barely above a whisper, broke. The silence. Why? Noah turned. Why what? Why give it to me? He offered a soft smile. Because someone once gave me their last sandwich. Changed everything. She blinked, clearly not expecting that answer. And now you pay it forward? Something like that. He turned again, then hesitated, pulled off his old work jacket and walked back to her. Here, you look colder than I do. She stared at it, then at him, suspicion softening just a little. I'm not a thief. I didn't say you were. Just someone who might need a jacket. Slowly, almost reverently, she took it. The rain had grown steadier now, and Noah nodded. Once before heading back toward home, sandwichless, jacketless, but oddly lighter. Grace greeted him with her usual whirlwind of chatter, her inhaler clutched in one hand and a library book in the other. At 10 years old, she was a head full of curiosity and lungs full of fragility. He handed her the sandwich and listened to her recount her day. Science class, a boy named Joey who kept pulling her braids, and how Mrs. Pendergrass read them Charlotte's Web and made everyone cry. As Grace talked, Noah's mind drifted back to the church steps. There had been something haunting about the girl, something unspoken, not pity. He hated that word, but a recognition, a kind of soul weariness he knew too well, a life that hadn't gone according to plan. He didn't even know her name. That night, as Grace drifted off to sleep under her horse-patterned quilt, Noah sat by the window with his coffee. Rain tapped gently on the glass. He thought of the girl again, wondered if she had found somewhere dry to sleep, wondered why someone like her, with eyes like that, ended up under a church awning with nothing but worn shoes and silence. He didn't know that 30 minutes after he left, she unwrapped the sandwich slowly, almost ceremonially, and ate every bite. That she buried her face in his jacket, letting it soak up the tears she hadn't shed in weeks. That she hadn't felt safe in months, but tonight, under the dripping eaves of an old church, she did. And he certainly didn't know that the girl he'd just given his last meal to was the legal heir to over 3,000 acres of the most valuable ranch land in the state. But all that would come later. Tonight it was just a sandwich, just another Tuesday, but maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something more. Morning came with a soft haze rolling over the hills, brushing against the town like a sigh too tired to stir the air. Noah rose early, same as always, not because he had to, but because silence before the world woke up gave him a kind of peace he hadn't found in years. Grace was still asleep upstairs. He could hear the soft rhythm of her breathing, the occasional wheeze that kept him alert even in his sleep. He'd long since learned to sleep light. Fatherhood had rewired his body and his soul in equal measure. He packed her lunch, kissed her forehead gently, and left a note by the cereal box like he did every morning. "You are brave, you are strong, you are my reason. Dad." It was his ritual. Grace never mentioned the notes, but she saved every single one in a shoebox beneath her bed. Noah drove the pickup to the garage, his usual route taking him past the church steps. He slowed. She was gone. Only the faint imprint of her sitting figure remained on the damp stone, and his old work jacket was folded neatly on the bench nearby, dry, clean, and placed with the kind of care that said, "Thank you," louder than words. But what caught his eye was the glint of something silver tucked beneath the collar of the jacket. He stepped out of the truck, curious, cautious, and picked it up. It was a pendant, a small silver feather, delicate and slightly tarnished, hanging from a leather cord. It didn't look valuable in the way diamonds did, but there was history in the etching, in the way the metal had softened with wear. It was well loved, clearly important. He turned it over and found initials scratched into the back in elegant, old-fashioned script. EMR. He stared at it, a quiet hum of questions stirring inside him. Who was she? Where had she gone? And why leave something that felt like a part of her? He slipped the feather into his shirt pocket and folded the jacket over his arm. Maybe she'd come back. Maybe she had somewhere else to be. But something told him she didn't have many places left. Back at the shop, the day passed in the usual. Rhythm, oil changes, busted radiators, small-town conversations with folks who needed more therapy than car repair. Noah was good with machines. They made sense, people not so much. Still, his mind drifted again and again to the girl. Her silence had said more than some people's shouting. He had no idea what her story was, but his gut told him it was. A hard one, That night, as he tucked Grace in, she noticed the feather pendant on his nightstand. "That's pretty," she said, blinking sleepily. "Is it Mom's?" Noah froze for a second, then smiled and shook his head. "No, sweet pea. It belonged to someone I met yesterday." "Are you going to give it back?" "I hope so." Grace turned on her side, her voice muffled against the pillow. "Then maybe you should write her a note, like you do for me." He chuckled. "You think that works for everyone?" "It works for me," she said simply, and within minutes she was asleep. Noah stared at her for a long moment, then sat at the kitchen table, an old spiral-bound notebook in front of him. He wasn't one for letters, but somehow the girl's quiet had created an ache in him, a need to say something even if no one read it. He scribbled quickly, awkwardly. "To the girl with the quiet eyes, I don't know your name, or where you're from, or what brought you to those church steps. But I know Grace when I see it. You didn't ask for help, but you didn't turn it away either. You reminded me that sometimes the smallest things, a sandwich, a jacket, can still matter. I found something of yours. I'll keep it safe. If you ever want it back, or just want to sit a while, you'll find me at the old garage off Maple. No questions, no judgment, just coffee and company. Noah." He folded the note and tucked it inside the jacket pocket, hanging it on the coat hook near the door, just in case. The week passed quietly. No word, no girl, no trace. But something had changed in Noah. He found himself looking up more often, glancing toward the door whenever the bell above the garage chimed, listening, hoping, wondering. Then, on Friday evening, just as the sun dipped low and painted the garage windows with amber and gold, she returned. He didn't hear her come in. One minute he was wiping down a workbench. The next, he looked up, and there she was, standing just inside the doorway. Like a ghost made flesh, same coat, same worn jeans, but this time her hair was tied back, her eyes clearer. "Hi," she said softly. Noah nodded as if she'd only stepped out for a coffee. Evening. She looked at the jacket on the hook, then at him. "You kept it. You left it. And the necklace." He pulled the silver feather from his pocket and placed it on the counter. Her hand trembled as she reached for it. "Thank you." He didn't ask what it meant to her. He didn't ask about the initials. Instead, he poured 2 cups of coffee from the pot near his workbench and offered her one. They sat together in silence. Not the awkward kind, the kind that understood. After a while, she spoke. "Ellie, my name's Ellie." "Noah," he replied. "And that's Grace, my daughter. She says I should write more notes." Ellie smiled faintly, tracing the pendant with her fingers. "She sounds smart." "She is," he said. "Gets it from her mother." The room quieted again. Outside, the sun was nearly gone, leaving behind only the warmth of its afterglow and the flicker of something new, fragile, uncertain, but undeniably present. Not a rescue, not a romance, not yet, but maybe the start of belonging in the quietest way. Saturday mornings in Meadowrun were slow and sacred. The sun always seemed to rise more gently on weekends, casting soft gold over the rooftops and coaxing steam from cups of diner coffee before anyone spoke a word. It was the kind of town where time didn't rush, and that was just fine with Noah Carter. He stood outside his garage, the old sign swaying above him in the breeze. Carter's Auto and Diesel, hand-painted by his late wife, back when they still believed in fresh starts and glossy tomorrows. Inside, Grace was curled up in the corner with her book, a small portable heater beside her and a blanket around her legs. She loved spending Saturdays at the shop, being near her dad, breathing in the scent of motor oil and worn leather like it was part of her DNA. And Noah didn't mind the company. Ellie hadn't come back since Tuesday. He didn't expect her to. But still, part of him watched the door more often than before. Not out of worry, not even curiosity, just hope. So when the bell above the shop door rang shortly after 10, Noah instinctively looked up. But it wasn't Ellie. It was a man in his late 60s, sharp-dressed and out of place, pressed slacks, a suede blazer, and a fedora that looked more Manhattan than Meadow Run. His presence was like someone had dropped a briefcase on a rocking chair porch, too polished for this town. "Morning," the man said, voice smooth like a politician's. "Are you Mr. Carter?" Noah stepped out from behind the counter, wiping, his hands on a rag. "That depends on who's asking." The man smiled, revealing unnervingly perfect teeth. "Name's Weston Fielding. I'm looking for someone. Thought you might have seen her." He pulled out a photo. A candid shot. Grainy, and a few years old, but unmistakably Ellie. Noah's face didn't move. "Why would I have seen her?" "Because she's been seen in this area," Fielding said, slipping the photo back into his coat. "And because she tends to drift toward people who extend kindness." Noah studied him. "That a crime now?" Fielding's smile tightened. "Not at all, but Eleanor McAllister has a history of disappearing, usually right before something big is expected of her." The name landed like a stone in a still pond. McAllister. It was a name that meant something in this state. Noah knew it the way you know the name of a brand you'll never afford. McAllister Ranch had been the beating heart of Oak County for generations. Land, cattle, timber, and quiet power. "Ellie." "Eleanor?" He said nothing. Fielding reached into his blazer again, this time pulling out an envelope. "If you see her, give her this. It's important." Noah hesitated, then took it. The envelope was unsealed. Inside was a map, an old hand-drawn survey of land that stretched for thousands of acres, with a star marked over Oak River Ranch. A handwritten note in elegant script read, "It's still yours. Come home." Noah looked up. "She doesn't seem like someone who wants to be found." "She never does," Fielding said. "But if she's here, Mr. Carter, tell her the ranch won't wait forever." And just like that, he left. Polished shoes clicking softly on the pavement, his car disappearing down the road like he hadn't just dropped a quiet bomb in the middle of Noah's morning. That night, as Grace brushed her teeth upstairs and the house settled into its soft creaks and sighs, Noah stood in the kitchen holding the map, Oak River Ranch. He'd heard of it, rumors mostly. The McAllisters had once owned half the county, but after Eleanor's mother passed, the land had become the center of a legal battle. Something about Ellie walking away from it all. The town had moved on, as towns do, but Noah couldn't shake. The image of Ellie curled under the church awning, hollow-eyed and silent. That wasn't just someone hiding, that was someone trying not to be found. He thought about burning the letter, or driving the envelope out past city limits and tossing it into the canyon winds. But instead, he did something different. On Sunday morning, Grace bounced into the kitchen. "Can we go somewhere?" Noah poured her orange juice. "Like where?" She shrugged. "Anywhere with horses." He paused, looked at the map again. Something in him shifted, an intuition. Quiet but insistent. "All right," he said. "Let's go on a drive." They followed the map, past the silos and gravel roads, beyond the last gas station, and the broken fence line with rusted license plates nailed into the wood. The drive took nearly an hour, winding through groves of golden aspen, until the land opened up, wide, breathing, ancient. Oak River Ranch wasn't abandoned, not completely. The house was weather-worn, but still standing, its porch sagging like a tired smile. The barn had a new lock. The fields were overgrown but not wild. There were signs of someone living there, tracks in the dirt, a stack of firewood, a wheelbarrow half filled with soil and tools. Noah parked the truck. "Is this it?" Grace whispered. "I think so." They walked quietly, not wanting to intrude, but unable to turn back. Something about the place felt sacred, old, rooted in more than just soil. At the barn door, Grace stopped. "Look," she said. On the ground, half buried in straw, was a carved wooden plaque, faded but still legible. "In memory of Margaret McAllister, may this land heal the broken." Noah crouched, brushed the dust from the edges. He didn't know Ellie's full story yet, but he was beginning to understand that she hadn't run away. She had returned. And maybe, just maybe, this land wasn't just a ranch. Maybe it was a place to start over. The wind out at Oak River carried a different sound, fuller somehow, like it passed through memories on its way across the fields. Grace was the first to break the silence. "This place feels like a story," she whispered, eyes wide as she looked up at the old ranch house. "A sad one." Noah didn't respond at first. He was staring at the barn, the way the roof leaned gently to the right, like it had bowed over time from holding too much sorrow. The place wasn't abandoned, but it wasn't lived in either. It was in between, like Ellie herself. He turned to Grace. "Let's not go poking around. We're guests, not ghosts." Grace nodded solemnly, then reached out and gently touched the wooden plaque again, the one bearing Margaret McAllister's name. She traced the carved letters as if trying to understand them with her fingertips. "She must have been someone important. She was someone's mother," Noah said quietly. "That's always important. They didn't expect to find Ellie that day, but she found them." Noah had just turned to call Grace back to the truck when he saw movement near the stable, subtle, cautious, a shadow, then a shape. Ellie stepped out into the afternoon light, hands dusty, braid pulled over her shoulder, eyes unreadable. She didn't look angry, just tired. "Thought you might show up eventually," she said softly. Noah removed his cap and gave her a nod. "Didn't mean to intrude, just had a feeling." She looked at Grace, who stood beside her father, arms folded like a little soldier, but eyes curious. Ellie softened. "Your daughter's the one with good instincts," Grace grinned. "Hi, Miss Ellie." Ellie gave a quiet smile in return. "Hi, Grace." A pause. Noah stepped forward. "We won't stay long. Just wanted to check the place out. It's beautiful out here." Ellie's gaze drifted toward the fields, golden and waving in the breeze. "It used to be." She didn't elaborate. Inside the barn, the light streamed through the slats in long, quiet stripes. Ellie moved like someone who belonged to the place but hadn't claimed it yet. Her hands brushing over beams, her fingers adjusting tools with unconscious familiarity. "This was my mother's heart," she said, not looking at them. "Not just her property. She could walk this barn blindfolded and still find the saddle she needed." Noah stood beside an old tack cabinet, careful not to touch anything. "And now it's yours." Ellie gave a small, dry laugh. "That's what the paperwork says. But this place doesn't feel like mine. Not yet." Grace had wandered to the stall. At the far end, where a soft whinny echoed, she gasped, "Daddy, there's a horse!" Noah moved quickly, scanning for danger but relaxed when he saw the mare, a chestnut beauty with wise eyes and a long scar down her right flank. "She's gentle," Ellie said, moving to the stall. She reached in and stroked the mare's neck. "This is Lacey. She was my mother's favorite. Got hurt in a storm a few years back, but she's tough." Grace extended her hand timidly. Lacey stepped forward, nuzzling her palm like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Lacey likes me," Grace beamed. Noah smiled, but Ellie's expression shifted, something between surprise and sadness. "I haven't seen her go near anyone in months," she murmured. They stood like that for a while, 3 people and a horse sharing something wordless, something bigger than introductions. Later, Ellie invited them inside the ranch house. It was rustic and warm in that neglected but loved way. The kitchen smelled faintly of herbs and firewood. A kettle sat on the stove, as if always ready. "I haven't had guests in years," she admitted, pouring tea into chipped mugs. "You're doing fine," Noah said. They sat around the table, Grace happily sipping warm cider, while flipping through an old photo album Ellie had reluctantly placed before her. She looks like you, Grace said, pointing to a picture of a young woman holding a newborn foal. Ellie nodded. That's my mom. She had kind eyes. She did, Ellie said, voice tightening. She also had cancer, the kind that doesn't care how good